Welcome to Engaging ESG, where we consider, challenge, and celebrate the evolving world of environmental, social, and governance communications. I'm Jennifer Owen, Senior Director of Marketing at Caesar.
And I'm Kati Callens, Global Sustainability Lead at Adobe. For Season 3, we're talking with climate communications leaders who are shaping the future of sustainability messaging. From connecting with stakeholders to crafting compelling impact stories, we'll uncover the strategies that worked and learn from those that didn't.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the field, you'll find practical tips and insights in every episode.
And whether you're working on your first sustainability report or reimagining your organization's climate narrative, these conversations will help you navigate the complexities of ESG communications. Let's get started.
Kati.
Jen, hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. It's nice and cozy and rainy in San Francisco today.
Are we going to start out talking weather again? Because that's
sorry. I know. Okay. Maybe not every time.
We can do it.
No, I'm also excited because we're going to be chatting with one of our favorite ESG comms experts today. It's what I would call truly a comms about comms experience.
Nicely played. Yeah.
Good branding.
I'm a big fan. And for anyone in the corporate comms space for sustainability, if you've been in it for the last decade or so, you will know our guest. He's a familiar voice. He's been a key player discussing trends and opportunities in the ESG sustainability comms arena.
Exactly. So who better to learn the ins and outs of this quick changing field than the sustainability communicator himself? Today we have Mike Hauer, who is joining us. So a little bit about Mike for those of you who are not lucky enough to have been hearing from him on a regular basis through LinkedIn or his newsletter. So who is Mike? Mike has been working in this field for over 15 years, diverse experience bridging journalism and communication strategy. He founded Hauer Impact, a boutique consultancy specializing in transforming complex sustainability initiatives into resonant narratives that capture attention and drive meaningful impact. He's worked with a lot of global brands, many of whom we've talked about on the podcast, such as Mars, The North Face, Snapchat, HP, Berry Global, among others. And as a respected sustainability thought leader, Mike's insights kind of extend beyond just this report consulting space, communications space. He's written for sustainability publications like GreenBiz, Sustainable Brands, Triple Pundit, covering topics such as climate policy, circular economy, sustainability strategy. And he, as I mentioned, has an active presence on LinkedIn, an engaged newsletter, and the Sustainability Communicator podcast, where he explores the nuances of the art of sustainability storytelling. And lastly, I'll note that Mike has been teaching a Writing for Sustainability masterclass that I took last fall and highly recommend. Welcome, Mike.
Well, with all that, Mike, nice having you. Welcome to Engaging ESG.
I'm exhausted by all the stuff that I'm apparently doing. I didn't realize that I'm a pretty busy guy, I guess.
Oh,
people always tell me, like, Mike, how do you do all this stuff? And I don't know. It's like my hobby and my job. And
don't think about it. Don't think too closely.
Yeah, but you're right. I am doing a lot of things right now. That's pretty crazy. And Kati, it's been great seeing you put your articles on LinkedIn. You're getting tons of traction. That's super proud of you. That's
thank you.
That's one of the reasons I started teaching the class, because I just feel like so many people in our space have lots of great ideas to share, and they might not. Well, remember in the class we talked a lot. Mostly it's about building the confidence to just do it and put yourself out there. But yeah, no, it's been great to see all your content go out there, and hopefully you'll put more out.
And we'll link to it in the show notes, because I think more people need to be reading about her approach to the passion portfolio, which I literally think about every day. That is.
Thank you both. You're so kind. Yeah, I do think for those of us in the space, I like that you called it your job and also your hobby. I think sometimes with writers and communicators, this work can really blur, right? Because obviously, to be good at our jobs, to be effective communicators, there's a bit of thinking about the craft of doing it. But then there's also worlds in which we also probably have creative writing practices or use, maybe we do morning pages. We have all these different pieces. And so making space for all of that can be a challenge, but I'm grateful for teachers and friends to help support integration in all the ways.
For sure.
Awesome. So to kick us off, Mike, I wanted to quote you back to you, which is potentially an uncomfortable thing. So thanks for being game.
Mm-hmm.
You did a post at the beginning of 2025 where you said, our current moment in sustainability and ESG communications could be categorized as first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Would you say this is your 2025 mantra? What about this speaks to you in the current moment as you're thinking about sustainability
still feel this
comms?
way going into February?
Yeah, I
Inquiring
do.
minds want to know.
I actually do. And it's funny because it's a popular quote. And I think I remember, I don't know if you guys followed the Theranos story back in the day, but I forget, Elizabeth Holmes used to quote that, and that's not a good person to be associated with. But it's apparently it might have been, people thought it was Gandhi, but it wasn't him, but nobody really knows where it came from. But it doesn't really matter. I like what it says. And I have thought a lot about it independently of whoever attributed that quote to.
I think it's Rocky.
It could be. When I started my career in sustainability, 15 so years ago, this was still like a pretty fly under the radar space. Like, it wasn't controversial. Well, a lot of things weren't controversial. People forget that too. Like, climate change was not controversial 15 years ago. There were Republicans that talked about it. There were Democrats that talked about it. It's actually kind of interesting that we're actually more backward now on this topic than we were.
I mean, didn't Nixon sign the Clean Air Act and Ford did the Clean Water Act? Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so remember the first couple years I was even trying to break into space. And I know like one of the questions you sent me is like, when is the last time you had to explain ESG? Or like, when I think about that, it's like, I've constantly had to explain what sustainability is, even like what my career is to my friends and family. And most of my friends and family are people that are like pretty progressive and cool with what I'm doing, but they still don't get it.
Yeah.
And I just remember trying to articulate what it was. And I didn't really know what it was when I first discovered what corporate sustainability was. I think I was at a sustainable brands conference in like 2012. I had worked in, they weren't calling it climate tech back then, but I was working in clean energy comms, my first job out of college. So I kind of had a dab in that, and then went to sustainable brands. And then I kind of was introduced to this idea of CSR. They weren't even calling it ESG yet. I didn't really get it still. I was still like, wait a minute, our company's just in business to make money. Like, this is probably like a bunch of BS, right? And I think that spirit is in a lot of us, because it's true. I mean, there is a lot of BS in our space. And I think I wrote about this at some point in the last year. Like, I think it was my last post actually of 2024, is that, is corporate sustainability bullshit? And I said, no, it's not bullshit. It's about dealing with the bullshit of business that exists to make sure that we can continue doing business. So going back to your original question, I think we all kind of really enjoyed I've been calling it kind of the ESG golden age. That was probably like 2020 to 2023, when like, I was right after the BlackRock letter.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I was in a business development role, and I was just, my phone was constantly, well, it wasn't really phone, email. I was getting emailed constantly by people from different companies who hadn't really been doing anything in sustainability. And they're like, my board's telling me we got to do an ESG report, we got to do this and that. And it was a great time to be a consultant, and it was a great time to really be in sustainability. Like, so many of my friends were able to like get promotions or get big raises. And it just seemed like, we're like, yes, we're finally
opened. Yeah.
Yeah. We finally made it. Like, we're people are listening to us. They're getting it. Like, great. This is super hopeful. And then actually, I started thinking about this at the gym yesterday. If it's probably going to be what I open my newsletter next week to, is I think it's a law of physics that for every action, there'll be an equal and opposite reaction. And I think that's kind of what we're facing now is we were making tons of progress. We were like, okay, we're making, like, all of a sudden people were noticing, and the bad guys were noticing. And I call them the bad guys because they are the bad guys.
Yeah.
We got to start. And I think that's something that I'm getting more like radicalized, but like, I think we're too nice. I think people that care about making the world better, sometimes we're too much peacemakers and too nice. And we're playing with people who aren't playing by the rules, and then they're cheating and winning. And I'm not talking about elections necessarily, but like, we're not playing with people who are playing fair. We're talking to people who are lying, who are willing to skew the truth to achieve their goals. And that really does put us at a disadvantage when we're trying to communicate these issues, because like, how do you communicate scientific facts to people that just like choose what they want to believe?
Right.
So anyway, why I think I am hopeful is this is inevitable. Like whenever you're trying to create change, you're going to have people that push back. This has happened throughout history. And I'm a history guy too. Like one of my degrees is in history. Think about how hard we had to fight in this country for civil rights. We still are fighting, and for even just to abolish slavery. Like I haven't been, I don't have the guts to bring this in any of my articles yet, but like, it's very fascinating. You look at the abolitionist movement in the US, like there were, and even like child labor and things like that at the beginning of the 20th century, there were tons of people that were like, oh, kids like it. It's okay. Yeah, we should let them work.
Chimney sweeps. Let's let it. Yeah.
I do think these reactionary forces that we're seeing today, it's the same kind of people that would have done that back then. Like people that are saying, like, look at our president right now, blaming like literally every problem in the world on DEI.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just code for like people that are non-white and not male. Right.
And, how can we redline these groups in new and innovative ways? Because I was thinking, I come into the sustainability world from the diversity space. And gosh, I hope that saying works. I hope that we win, because this pushback has been huge.
So going back to
out
it,
there. Yeah.
So we need to start thinking in longer time periods. So like, I think a lot of us were like thinking, 2030, 2050, which they're very important milestones for climate and so forth. But sustainability is not going to ever stop being a thing, right? Like this is going to go beyond our lifetime. I mean, like, let's say by some miracle we achieve net zero by 2050. We have to maintain net zero forever.
Right. Yes.
And it's not like, I don't know if you guys are Star Wars fans, but it's not like we're going to blow up the Death Star and then dance with some Ewoks on Endor, right? Like that's not.
You're only going to build another Death Star. Well, come on.
And if you watch I'm not a big fan of the sequel trilogy, but like then Palpatine just comes back randomly. Like, but the point is that I think this is where narratives in my mind come into play, where it's like, we need to change even the narrative that how we think of corporate sustainability is that it's not like, there is urgency. We need to act, but we also need to realize that this is bigger than us. This is going to go beyond like our lifetimes and everyone's lifetimes. Right. And so we're going to lose a lot, but we have to keep fighting. And I do ultimately believe in like, if we don't win, then humans won't be around anyway. So
Right.
I think we're going to look back. Like, I do really think, this is what's scary is there's a lot of forces today that are trying to rewrite even more like 100 years ago history, but kind of how we look back on the Gilded Age and being like, that was pretty messed up that, young kids were in the mines and like doing things like that that's not okay.
How could women not have their own credit cards in this
exactly.
without their husband signing on? So,
And so I do think in 100 years, if we're still around, like our species is still around, I think we're going to look back on this era and be like, holy crap, like we allowed 0.5% of the population to have that much wealth while there are all the, homelessness is worse than it's ever been. And I think that for sustainability professionals, that's usually what gets us into this space, right? Is that we think about more than just the current moment. And I think that is what we should hold on to, is that, we're like, there have been dark ages, like there's been periods of human history where things have been really crappy and we come back, and it might not be our lifetimes. I mean, I'd like to think in our lifetimes we're going to resolve this, but we need to be willing to kind of toughen up, so to speak, and realize that, this is a bigger fight that we might not finish this fight in our lifetimes. And so we need to build that infrastructure to continue it moving forward. Even right now, I mean, in the US, like we're in real danger of losing our democracy. We really are. And it's becoming pretty clear. And corporate sustainability might be the least of our freaking worries in the next 6 years or something. But that doesn't mean hopefully I'm wrong. But I think we need to, that's why I think that we need to think perspective. Why perspective is, I guess, the point, right? So we were high, now we're low, we will come back.
Right.
But it's like no victory is ever permanent. Like there's always gonna be something else.
Yes.
That was a long-winded answer. Well,
so I was once at an event. It was about recruitment, retention, and advancement of women at the workplace. And this panel, this was like, it must have been like 15 years ago. This panel essentially said, we're not solving it. Hopefully we'll set it up for our daughters. And this woman next to me, she raised her hand. I've never seen such anger radiate. She's like, are you shitting me? And I'm sorry for the parents who have this blank. Are you shitting me? that we've already given up and we're putting this on the next generation. And so I think there's, with all of that, with a long-term view, there's also we got to stop thinking the next generation is this. They did it to me and Gen X. They did it to the millennials. Now we're doing it to, like, it's always that. There's some sort of balance between.
And that's not what I'm not saying we pawn this off to the next generation, but I'm saying is that all we can do is what we can do with the time that we have.
Yep.
And I actually been thinking about this a lot too, from I'm actually in the beginning of process of writing a book about sustainability communication, which hopefully will come out next year. So I'm working with the publisher right now to kind of refine the idea. And it's one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about is like, what is the purpose of sustainability? Like, in a business context, right? Like we did talk about earlier. Yeah. Okay. It's about addressing material risks or whatever, but like, what is success? Like solving climate change, like addressing every social inequality in the world. Like I think that's also where I think we sometimes lose ourselves, because like I thought about this recently too. I'm like, there's probably quite a few people who are fine with climate action, who are maybe more socially conservative, who might not agree with certain social issues. But we basically say you need to be on board with all this stuff or else. And so I actually think I don't know. I'm not saying we need to drop like social issues, but we need to be strategic about it. Like, okay, like we can't have DEI without a planet that's livable, right? So like maybe we need to pick our battles. Like I feel like for a while we were getting kind of cocky and like we thought we could do it all at the same time. And I know there's the whole concept of like intersectional climate action and all that stuff, but like realistically where we are in this current moment, like the world's moving rightward, and it's actually going to get harder as climate gets more unstable. There's going to be more authoritarianism rising because that's just what's going to happen. I mean, there's been political scientists have been predicting this for years. So like, what do we do? And I don't know the answer to that, but I also think that this is also why a lot of times our messages get lost, is that we are preaching, like I'm as liberal as they come, but like, does every single person need to agree with all my social issues to get them to take on climate change? I don't think so. Like, and it needs to be okay. We shouldn't cancel someone if they have a certain worldview. I might think it's not right or even disgusting, but if they're still willing to invest in climate action, we need to work with people like that, right? And so I feel like we need to do a lot of self-reflection. This isn't just sustainability. Maybe like this is like the whole Democratic Party right now needs to figure this out. But
I used to say that when I was in the world of working motherhood, which I still am personally, but I was the editor of a media company that dealt with that. I would always say, I care about the issue and the solution. It doesn't, if Nixon came, and he almost did, and passed affordable childcare for all, great. Or FMLA paid. I don't care who does it. I just want these benefits. I don't care who solves for sustainability. Just want it done. So,
and we need to get back to that for it to work. And I think also where we've lost, like corporate sustainability has lost its way in a lot of ways, is that we're trying to have this argument for many years where like, oh, government's not going to do it. It's all the private sector.
Yeah.
I did mention this in one of my articles earlier this year. It's actually one of the most popular articles I put out. I couldn't believe it blew up. It was basically talking about how corporate sustainability needs a new narrative. One of the things I said in it was we need to be more humble about our scope.
Yeah.
And like, no business is, I think I talked about this in the writing class about like, when you're communicating sustainability from a company perspective, like you shouldn't be using this lofty language like you're going to like single-handedly solve all the problems, right? But even if you do that collectively, like the private sector is not going to solve this stuff. They can't. They don't have the ability to. They need to work with a government that creates a level playing field, especially if we're just focusing specifically on climate action, right? Like we're not going to volunteer our way out of this mess. And so now, obviously, with what's happening in the federal government, I don't know what the F's going to happen there, but at least like state and local level, there's action happening still, which is encouraging. But the point is I think companies need to stop being like, we don't need government oversight. We can innovate our way out of this on our own. Like that's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with what y'all are talking about. And I think because I started my career in policy at the EPA and then also had some work at nonprofits, like I do think there is this beautiful vision that might not be realized as effectively in the next 4 years of like, what are the levers of power that private companies have? What are the levers that business has? What is the lever that government has? What is the levers that nonprofits have? And if everyone can like utilize that capacity and ideally that like legitimacy, right? Like to what you're saying in terms of communicating, government traditionally just had a lot more popularity with the people because like they were created to provide social goods. I think some of this tension we're seeing around DEI and maybe some of the social issues is like people don't want companies maybe doing that or don't see it as like authentic.
Right.
And there's a bit of like a cognitive dissonance potentially that's happening. Whereas if you get those services or language or support or tooling from a nonprofit, or from a government, like, right, that's a little bit more of their role in society. And so I do think that there's this interesting position that companies are in where the well-run, thoughtful, value-driven companies have built out these programs around ESG topics because it's the right thing to do. And also because often it can help with bottom line and retention and all of the reasons that we all know about. But like, what is this new normal in terms of like the role of business and the role of talking about sustainability? And as we're all comms professionals, one of the things that we always talk about is how do we make people the center of these stories, right? Because a ton of carbon is the most unrelatable unit of measurement possible. And so maybe that's a question for you, Mike, is like, how do we continue to make these conversations people-centric, focused on individuals and storytelling in a way that could resonate?
Yeah, I mean, all of the data shows around like everything I studied in grad school about, like I studied public affairs and kind of strategic communication in grad school, which was focused on sustainability. And this will be also not trying to promote my book too much when it hasn't been written yet, but that's one of the things I'm going to focus on is like this idea of worldviews and how people view reality. And it's something that's, there's been research on this for over almost a century now. We all tend to think that we live in an objective reality, and there are like rules of physics, and there's things that like there is objective truth.
If you believe physics.
Well, that's exactly my point, is that humans, we evolved to really not pay attention to everything that's happening all the time around us. Like there's too much information like surrounding us and hitting us from every direction all the time for us to make sense of it. And so we actually have to create narratives to make sense of the world, right? So, this is like the basis of culture. And like, if you're a hunter and gatherer tribe, that's why you might have like a connection with nature, because like that you make up stories to make, and I'm not going to get into talks about religion or anything like that, but like religion is also whatever you believe it is, there's still stories that help you make sense of the world, right? I really like Noah Harari's work of Sapiens. I don't know if you've ever read Sapiens, really popular, came out a while ago. He's actually, a lot of predictions he made are very accurate. He talks a lot about how like, even think about money. Money doesn't exist. It's made up. We all agree it's a thing. It's a story, a story about money. Even the concept of a state, right? Like there's no such thing as nationalism. We made it up.
Except in Ohio.
But so like, as the media environment's changed, so if you think about it, like, when the US was founded, how information was shared. So maybe you would have like a pamphlet or some newspapers, or if you would get letters that would take weeks to get from one place to the other, right? So you would have to be waiting forever to get a response. Like you would basically get updated on, let's say something happened in Europe, it would take you probably a couple months because it had to go on a ship and come across. Things were very slow. And then as technology developed, then there was the telegram, which was more quicker technology for communication. And then eventually then you had like radio, which revolutionized that, and TV. And then like 50, 60 years ago, you would have maybe 3 news stations,
right?
Where you'd have like Walter Cronkite read the news. And it was basically 3 news stations that everyone would get their news from. It was kind of agreed upon. Okay, they're just reading the news, objective fact. Then we can all make our opinions based off that fact. And then it was probably around the rise of cable news where things started to shift. So they call it a fragmented media environment, which we're in today, which is getting even more fragmented than we ever thought possible. So then all of a sudden you had more, CNN came out, and then you had Fox News, and then now all of a sudden people are able to choose where they get their information, right? So that's why, if any of you have a relative or a friend who gets all their news from Fox News, they're living in a very different world than someone who's getting it from CNN or MSNBC. And then that's gotten even more complicated with the rise of social media. And I forget this too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when I was like Facebook, I was one of the first people on Facebook, like in 2005, when you had to be like out of, there's like 10 colleges that you could go to Facebook. Never would have thought back then that would be threatening democracy later on. So anyway, now we're living in a world where everyone can kind of go wherever they want to go to get the facts that reaffirm what they already believe. So there's this concept called confirmation bias, which basically humans want to just seek out information that reinforces what we already believe. So because it feels good, right?
Yeah.
And so back in the day, you couldn't do that as much because like you had to listen to Walter Cronkite and like that's what it was. And now I'm like, okay, well, I believe the world is flat. And there's actually a really disturbing number of Americans that believe the world is flat. I can go to that YouTube guy that I like and just listen to him. Or now this is also happening with social media now. Like Twitter became X, and then now a bunch of people left that and went to True Social, or now they're Blue Sky. Now we're all they're called echo chambers, right? Everyone's heard the term echo chamber now. So going back to what you were saying earlier, sorry to get really nerdy about it, but it's more complicated than just making it resonate with individuals. Because like we even saw this last year, like with the storms that were hitting North Carolina, for example, it blew my mind to see like there were these people that were literally shooting at FEMA workers.
Yeah. Because
they thought they were there to take their house or to like take over. And they still deny climate change, even though as their freaking world's getting destroyed.
Yeah.
And because worldviews are so much more powerful than anything. So to people like us that I'm not saying that we're also part of this, like our worldviews are shaped by, like, we're not saying we're better than anybody else, but I'd say if you adhere your worldviews to what scientists say, I think you have a more accurate perception of what's happening in the world. But there's a lot of people now that have been raised or they're part of a community where they don't trust scientists, or they've been told. This has been happening in the US for years, where the GOP for the last 30 years has been trying to undermine confidence in government. And it's pretty easy to do when you can basically just make sure the government doesn't work ever. And then eventually 30 years later, look where today.
The government. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so how do you operate in that environment? I don't have the right answer to that, but I do think there's been a couple of points that have been made over the years by, like, I remember this was a couple years back, maybe it was last time Trump was in power. The Environmental Voter Project somebody went on a podcast and was talking about how, like, if you actually look at the data of like public opinion in the US, like there's actually not as much controversy over climate than you would think. It's just that nobody prioritizes it. So like, I mean, I even see it with my friend group, right? Like most of my friends are pretty liberal, but like they're not climate. I mean, they're not like
deniers.
Climate is not the top of mind for them. So basically it's like, instead of trying to spin our wheels, like going after people who just live in another planet, we would actually be better served trying to activate people who are fine with this and maybe share the same worldviews. And we just need to help them kind of inch up the prioritization of these issues. I'm not even talking about just elections, but even just with everything, right? And anyway, I could talk on and on about that, but that's my long-winded. All I do is give long-winded answers. You can edit me down.
Well, you know, that's the joy of ESG comms.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Are you seeing some campaign, like, or something that's organized? Like, are there moments where you're like, ooh, that's interesting, the way they're doing it. That approaches that. I see what they're doing there, and that's interesting.
Like from a company?
Yeah.
Honestly, I was thinking about this earlier, and there's not a lot of companies doing a good job. I would say, I mean, this is one of my clients, Mars, has been doing a good job in the sense that they actually put a lot of time and money into communicating what and they actually are doing the work too, which is cool. Like I think for their net zero goal, they like promised to invest like $1 billion over the next like couple of years. And because they have their consumer facing brand, they actually do invest a lot into that kind of communication. Like I help them with their net zero roadmap and their website that's focused on that. And they are using like personal stories to kind of help people understand these issues more. But I do think the shift we've seen the last few years in most companies is just the shift to compliance. So there hasn't been, like, I'm spending more of my time doing reporting now than I'd like to, but it is, it's what the market's demanding. And that's a way to stay in the game. And I do have opportunities sometimes when like I get hired to do a report, and then they'll also hire me to help them kind of shift the work on the narrative and like, how do we launch this out into the world and that kind of thing. But we're not seeing as much. Like, I remember like when I was at Edelman, I don't know, about 10 years ago, like we had a lot of these projects where there was like, help us develop like a strategic communications framework around our purpose and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's probably still happening, but I'm not seeing as much of that. And I think a lot of companies are, because they don't have as many resources, or that's not the right thing. They have the resources, they just choose not to devote them to everything that they need. That they're like, okay, well, we only have so much money we're willing to spend on this. Like, we have to do reporting. That's what we have to do. So we're going to focus on that. And then also, like, actually I've been reaching out to some people to go on my podcast. I don't know if this has happened to you guys as you're looking for guests, but I've had a few people tell me like, I'm not going to get approval to go on your podcast right now because like we're trying to keep our head down. Like, I'm not really allowed to talk about anything.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely an inflection point in the industry, right? In terms of how we talk about this work. What like are we going to start to see green hushing? Are people going to keep investing in this work, but maybe not talking about it so proactively? Or maybe just be like, it feels in some ways like there's like this kind of banned booked lists of words to use right now. Like I've been talking with some folks who are like, they currently have a DEI program, let's say, but their leadership is really pressuring them to drop the D. Like, and so I've
seen that too.
Wow. Yeah. And so I think to me, that's an interesting, and like the debate that I've been having with peers in my circles is like, okay, let's say you drop the D in DEI.
Right.
Like, if anything, that's a shift that some of your stakeholders are going to notice.
Yeah.
And like, is that actually going to put you more on blast? Like, there's articles now about all the companies that are doing active DEI shifts.
Yeah.
And so versus like continuing forward with like speaking consistently.
Yeah.
Well, I have some thoughts on that. And well, this has happened to me recently. I'm not going to say which client, but where they told us to change language. And honestly, you got to look at who's pushing this, and it's mostly boards, and look who's mostly on boards. It's usually kind of older conservative white dudes.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. Although some boards I know where this happened, there were actually women and people of color on it that agreed with this, but they're all, it's not ideological. They're being practical right now. I think it's because they're like, they're not anti-DEI, but they're like,
diversity's drawing fire.
Be a target.
Yeah. Like right now, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Like there's an executive order for the federal government to start like going after companies that are quote unquote woke. And whether that actually ends up happening is yet to be seen. But I could see from a risk management perspective, like maybe keeping your head down makes sense in the short run. Long run, it probably isn't, because like this is all. And I think I made a post about this the other day too on LinkedIn. Like everything is going to come back around. Like we're going to make it. We're kind of in a this goes back to what we were saying earlier about like the pushback is temporary. Like we're going to come back. And then how are all these companies that kind of were on the wrong side of history, what are they going to say then? You're like, oh shit. Yeah, never mind. We care about this.
They're just going to stare into camera and they won't blink. That's what will happen.
Right.
That's what will happen.
Yeah.
And depending on how much you want your stuff delivered to your door as fast as humanly possible, you will ignore it. So, boy, that's a downer. I'm sorry.
No, I mean,
don't worry. We're going to end on a high note.
Bring us home,
we work
Katie.
in sustainability,
Bring us
guys.
home.
I got it. So, Mike, you've already given us some really great recs on books to read, but one of the focuses of this interview series is for us to really hear about what are on people's bookshelves, what are they playing in their earbuds, recs for books, movies, shows that are resonating with you. Ideally climate related, but any.
Oh, I got some books back here.
Okay.
Wait, is this going to be is this only audio?
Yes, it's only audio.
Yeah. Okay.
You're going to have to say the name.
Yeah. So everybody listening, I'm currently turning around to look at my bookshelf.
Here he goes. Oh,
this is the best. Okay. You guys can see it. So this is the best book on sustainability or climate communication that I've ever read. It came out like 10 years ago. It's called Don't Even Think About It, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change by George Marshall. This is probably the best all-around primer on why climate change is so hard. And it actually still stands today. It's a lot. There's a lot of really fascinating points in here, like around like sociology, psychology. Like one data point that's pretty interesting. It's like, you would think that people that have children would be more likely to care about climate. It's actually not true. People who have children are more likely to deny climate because it's one of those diffuse issues that people don't want to believe that there's things they can't protect their children from. So they'd rather just downplay the existence of a problem. So sociological things like that.
Fascinating.
That is fascinating. And that totally, like, I feel it in my heart where it's like,
yeah.
Yep. I could see that. This is happening in real time, people. This is what's organic.
I just started reading this book, but it's technically not about sustainability, but it's relevant to it. It's called For Profit, A History of Corporations. And it actually goes into, I'm only like probably a quarter of the way through it now, but it actually talks about like the origins of like the private sector as a thing, like going even back to like the Roman Empire. And what's interesting is the first corporations, in order to get their charters, they had to prove to like the king and queen that they had a social end, like that they were going to do something.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, so that's something that's interesting too. So even when you think about it, like this whole movement that we're a part of is actually kind of going back to the roots of point of business. Cause we've all been kind of living in this neo-conservative nightmare for the last like the entire time I've been alive. I haven't been alive for 40 years yet. And it's been like this. And this whole idea that like profit at all costs is actually a relatively new concept.
Yeah.
But we're just being led to think that
but you're born into it and you think, well, that's it.
Yeah. And that's another thing so going back to the mindset thing. So there's that. And then what else? I don't know. I read a lot of books. I would definitely check out, my friend Matt Siegel wrote a book last year called ESG Mindset, which is a pretty good primer on, I mean, it's probably aimed at people that you guys would probably know everything in the book already, but it's kind of just a good primer on ESG overall. And then what was another? I'm just telling you books I recently read pretty much, but I just read a book about Genghis Khan. Well, one thing I would actually recommend to sustainability professionals is read books that are not directly about sustainability sometimes. Because like I actually, you should read my book when it comes out next year. But
other than that,
I find that because sustainability touches everything, literally everything, history or culture, like the more you can read. Like I just read a book about Genghis Khan. I'm a history nerd, so I just picked it up. And it was actually pretty dang fascinating where he talked about like how Genghis Khan actually was responsible for our modern economy, basically. Like he was the first one to, because they conquered part of Europe and Asia and Middle East, and they created the first supply chains across
regions,
continents. And they were more about, like, we were raised to think he was just this barbarian, but he actually created, I mean, he was pretty tough guy, but he actually created a lot of stability in a time when like, feudal Europe was just like beheading people for saying the wrong thing. So yeah, I would recommend like get outside of like the sustainability, like read sustainability books, but challenge yourself to also read books that are more broadly about politics or history or culture, because I feel like there's lessons that we can apply from these books to our work. And I mean, like when I write this book, I'm going to be working on, I'm trying to bring in a bunch of the stuff, like the stuff I was nerding out earlier about like, worldviews and framing, like that's all stuff that I learned in like from a more of the comms world, but I think people in the sustainability world aren't always aware of. So I'm trying to bring that in.
Yeah.
And then podcasts, obviously yours.
Flattery will get you everywhere here.
Everyone listens to the Daily, but I like the Daily just for staying on top of stuff. I listen to Freakonomics Radio a lot, although they've been kind of going a little downhill lately.
Ooh.
Again, I think because I'm living and breathing sustainability all the time, I don't have as much capacity to, like I try to limit my sustainability content outside of that, because it's like, I just, you can only listen to this stuff for so long before your brain just like, come on.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think again, like I said, because we're touching everything in the world here, like I always can apply things I learned from other kind of sectors or topics back to what we're doing here.
Oh, yeah, I love that you brought in history. I think that's a really valuable tool for us right now. And it reminds me of a book that I'll recommend, which is Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit.
Oh, okay.
It's a short book. It came out in 2004, but also is incredibly relevant. And she talks about how we can think about the climate movement in the historical framing of
Oh,
civil rights and
yeah.
kind of all these other
Oh,
social
that's great.
progressive movements.
Okay.
And it also reminds me, I was just talking with someone yesterday about Malcolm Gladwell has a new book called The Revenge of the Tipping Point.
Oh, I heard
Yeah.
He
about that.
basically went back to his original book and was going to edit it, and then was like, actually,
I
this
have
is
a
trash.
whole- yeah.
And so he wrote a new book. And one of his chapters is about gay marriage and how many of the activists who were involved with that work thought that it was basically like a year or two before it passed. And they
Mhm.
were like in the deepest, darkest doldrums.
Mhm.
And they were like, this is never going to happen. But what they weren't aware of was just like the social perception and shift that was happening.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I also been reflecting on that story a little bit to be
Oh.
like, okay, like
All right.
we're not always aware of what's happening across the
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
for
That's
social change.
that's a good one. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell has some good stuff. And yeah, I think the takeaway is that we are in our small little echo chamber on LinkedIn with our, and
Yes.
it's fine, but like most of the world is not as freaked out as we are, which is part of the problem. But
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
but I think we also, for our own mental health and for our own like level setting, the more we can get out of our circles. Like actually one of my goals for this year is to kind of go to more non-sustainability events, like to do like more comms or maybe industry events.
Mhm.
Just because like, how can I communicate sustainability to people? Like, look how few people work in sustainability. Like I'm trying to communicate to people that are
Yeah.
not in our echo chamber. So
Right.
we need to get out of these bubbles at our companies too. Like we need to get, I mean, usually it's one person shows or small teams, but
Mhm.
the more that we can start thinking as a non-sustainability professional, the more successful I think we're going to be.
I love it.
For sure.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, this is fun. It's so much more fun to be the person. I'm usually the one interviewing, so it's fun to be interviewed.
It was so stressful. No, it was very good. So thank you for joining us. And
Yeah.
I don't know, Katie, any last thoughts?
Nope. We will add a lot of links to all of the different articles and books and podcasts mentioned, and definitely keep up with Mike. We'll have access to his newsletter and all of that in the show notes. So thank you, Mike.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Super fun.
Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? Email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.